Alrighty then. We're back for another great week of Game Masters Arsenal. Once again, this is a live show on Twitch. Link will be in the description if you're listening to the archive later and the audio show, which is later. Like, subscribe, do whatever you want to if you keep wanting to see this show as we train up our future DMs and GMs to run their games. And, of course, to use some of the most dangerous creatures in D&D effectively. I'm your GM, Isaiah, and this week we're taking a look at the Dracohydra. Now, the Dracohydra is one of those creatures that you're going to see mostly at the end of your campaigns. Now, because most campaigns only go up to level 12, partly because of how difficult it is to run. Sorry, I got some cords laying around. And if you're hearing any background noise, that's because there's a construction crew outside. Can't be avoided, unfortunately. But back to of course, the Dracohydra is one of those creatures you'll see at the end of one of your campaigns. That is because most campaigns only go to 12, and this thing is CR 11. This thing, story-wise, isn't really intelligent enough to be its own, like, creature, big bad plotter. Unlike dragons, who are super powerful and super intelligent, these things got an intelligence of 6. And so I'm like, with an intelligence of 6, it's not going to be able to really do all that much. If you see some stuff coming up, I am messing with my, I am getting everything resolved for the, for my, to bring up an actual, like, video of it. But yeah, so overall, this whole thing is not something that you can really effectively use as its own big bad. Now, this is a creature that wanders the wanders the area, just wrecking havoc, and that's because that is what this creature is. It needs to eat. Now, what a Dracohydra is, I'm going to be reading straight out of the book, Fizban's Treasury of Dragons in 5th edition. What it is, oh, sorry, my thing is misbehaving again. Oh, wow, yeah, this whole thing is just misbehaving. We've got another Dracohydra on the screen. They're multiplying. What a Dracohydra is, it is the result of arcane experimentation dedicated to recreating Tiamat's power. Now, that can just be redone in any number of ways. You know, recreating Tiamat's power could be recreating the dragon god's power in any way you want. And because of that, this thing's easy to put in anything. What this is magically, the body of a Hydra has been combined with the 5 heads of the different chromatic dragons. And because of that, the 5 heads have become, have gotten their own abilities. Kind of a good idea. Brilliant idea for a creature. You know, you combine the strength of a dragon with its chromatic breath and its other abilities with the where is it? Sorry, my computer is not behaving. With the strength and of a Hydra. So sorry, that I got that confused. So what we're combining is the body of a Hydra, which allows it to regrow its heads, and the breath and attacks of a dragon. As you can see, I've pulled up a copy of its stat block here. It's coming right off of Roll20 here, not officially from Roll20, but you know, we're utilizing it. Honestly, I do love Roll20. They're great. Now, I'm a little bit all over the place with this thing, and I need to really focus in because it does matter to you guys. Now, back to our friend the Dracohydra. Now, the Dracohydra, stat block-wise, armor class 17, pretty good stat block. Hit points 218 average, which means this thing has a crap ton of hit points. This thing is scary because it has so many hit points. Most people, they can one-shot it. Odds are they won't. This can also be a creature that's avoided when you want to deal with those players that try to one-shot everything because its heads grow back. It's just a dragon. Strength 20, Dex 12, Con 20. It's got some like good stats spread. It is definitely a min-maxed character where it's like, yes, dump stat intelligence. It has no intelligence whatsoever. Barely any wisdom. All right wisdom, all right charisma. It's weird that it has charisma. It understands Draconic but can't speak, so I don't really understand the point of having all that charisma there. And how it's so charismatic, you know? How is this thing charismatic? It's literally a Hydra with dragon heads. Now, with the Dracohydra being that way, and its base stat block being so strong, how can you honestly use this other than something terrorizing the peaks? Now, that's one way you can do it. This thing clears out an area, hunts the area to desolation, and then moves on. That's a fun thing, you know. A Dracohydra moves into the territory, and you got to deal with. You can send your party to deal with it. It can be your fun, like, epilogue adventure at the end of your campaign, or it can be an introduction to an even bigger threat, because something else that Dracohydras are known for is that they will be in service of the spellcaster who made them, as long as the rituals of its creation are keeping it obedient. It's a brilliant idea. This means, despite it, this thing can be a minion. Which, honestly, I don't see the reason why this thing should be the minion, but it's capable of being the minion. And you can be like, it's guarding a castle, it does have a lot of intelligence, but this thing is way dangerous and way deadly. Now, its special abilities, of course, skills, has a perception of 9, which means you're not sneaking around this thing too easily, because when it rolls that perception, it's really well. It's got a passive perception of 19, so even if it's not, like, actively searching for somebody, odds are it's going to see somebody. You're not going to beat that passive perception very easily. It understands Draconic but can't speak it, which means it technically can be conversed with. You could deal with it, technically, but it's one of those things that this thing just wants food. This thing just wants to eat. Because the thing about Dracohydras is they need... Each of their heads demand a feast. So it's like, that's why they hunt to desolation. Because each head requires essentially the food of a dragon, and so it needs to feast on everything. It's a very easy evil monster to show in there, because it's like, yeah, no, the Dracohydra came into the territory. Our knights can't deal with it. We've sent them. They get vaporized by its breath weapon. Just like the Hydra, it has multi-headed. Multi-heads is the ability. I'm calling it multi-headed. It should be multi-headed. I don't know why it's called multiple heads. The Draco it has 5 heads base, and if it has more than 1 head, it has advantage on saving throws against being blinded, charmed, frightened, deafened, stunned, and knocked unconscious. And that's because, you know, having 5 heads means that they're all essentially communicating with each other. They're all smart, like not intelligent. They can at least watch out for each other and make sure that they're not falling under a charm. Now, when it takes 30 or more damage, one of its heads dies. If all heads dies, it dies. At the end of its turn, the Dracohydra grows 2 heads for each of the heads that died since its last turn, unless it has taken radiant damage. Now, this is fascinating because this gives the creature a very easy weakness for players to exploit if they know anything or if they've read the stat block. If it takes 30 or more damage on a single turn. Now, that can mean 2 things. That can mean either on a turn, when a player hits it, or it can mean a turn cycle. It's not very clear. 5e has this issue where they do not explain that kind of terminology well enough, and you've got to go look in other places. I do not believe the intention of this thing is that 5 players could all hit it for 30 damage and kill it. I do not think that's how this works. From a combatant as a CR11 creature, 30 damage in a turn, yeah, okay, the fighter's going to blow through that. The wizard could fireball this thing. The cleric could easily do 30 damage to this thing. Everyone could do 30 damage feasibly by this point, which means this 218 hit points doesn't matter if this thing can be one shot and over the course of a turn cycle. So I'm thinking what the intention was and this is how I played in my games, and my players can fight me on this essentially. I do not believe it intends to mean an entire turn. 150 in a turn cycle, and this thing's dead. It can't come back. No, this thing's supposed to be a very difficult encounter. These things are supposed to be terrors, and if it could be taken down by a bunch of knights wielding swords like that, no. How I play this is one head per turn cycle, and so essentially I play it as it when it dies at the end of its turn. The cycle resets and it regrows the 2 heads unless it's taken radiant damage. That means smart players, they can hit this thing with radiant have one person hit this thing with radiant damage, everybody else smack this thing, and then kill off a head every round, making it progressively weaker and weaker. Honestly, I believe that's how it's supposed to be. As a DM and as a GM, if you want to make this thing dangerous, I think that's how you should play the multi-heads ability, is turn cycle, not one turn. Don't let everybody kill a head. Somebody can kill a head. Not everybody can kill it. Maybe you do it that the extra head kills come, like, if somebody rolls a nat 20 on their attack, it's like, yeah, no, they cut the head off. They just take the thing's head off. And it's like, cool, you guys get to kill an extra head this round. It's a great way to reward that ability without diminishing this thing's threat. Its other ability is reactive heads. For each head beyond the first one, it gains an additional reaction that can only be used for opportunity attacks, which means this thing has 5 opportunity attacks, not 1, 5. Which can be intimidating. This thing has 5 opportunity attacks, and to get into like why that's dangerous, we should talk about its attacks. But before that, its last ability is wakeful. When it sleeps, one of its heads are awake. Pretty simple. When this sleeps, one is always awake. This means that, guess what? They're hard to sneak up on. You're never going to catch this thing sleeping because it'll just wake itself up completely. Onto its attacks, which is where this thing in combat and its strategy comes in as a GM. It has a weapon attack, +9 to hit, reach of 10 feet. So this thing has a very long reach, and this thing is a huge monstrosity. So this thing is massive. It'll take up a lot of your board. And 10-foot reach, it can hit most things. It only hits for 1d10 +5, and it gets to choose which damage type it's going to use. Acid, cold, fire, lightning, or poison. And this is just the Dracohydra chooses which ones, which means if they hit them for fire damage, and they find out, oh, that guy's immune to fire or has resistance to fire, it may take a minute. Like, if it's an immunity, it's essentially a bite, crunch, it didn't work. Okay, try something else. It's simple strategy. This thing should have simple strategies. This thing's going to feed. It's going to rush you head first. It has smart to do that. It has as many bite attacks as it does heads. Yeah. Let's talk about its movement. Only 30 feet swim and fly, which honestly, not a lot of movement compared to other dragons. But that does mean that this thing's probably not going to pick you up and drop you. I've run creatures that do that, are intelligent enough, crack them like a turtle. Crack the thick ones like a turtle, but with a +9 to hit, odds are you don't have to deal with that. Most people's AC don't exceed like 20, which means this thing has about a 50-50 shot of hitting. And when you have 5 attacks on the first go, you're probably going to hit. Its last ability, of course, is the prismatic breath. It exhales a single breath of multicolored energy in a 60-foot cone. Nice big cone to hit the entire party with. On a failed save, DC 17 dexterity, the creature takes 6d10 damage of a chosen type chosen by the Dracohydra. On a successful save, it takes half that much damage. I like that damage. 6d10 is a lot. Maximum of 60 damage, averages about 30 damage against everybody. At level 12, that's not going to knock somebody outright. Outright, but it will give off this, oh crap. This thing has the ability of a dragon, and with a 4 to 6 recharge, it has a 50-50 shot of just recharging this ability every round, which means technically this thing has the chance to prismatic breath, prismatic breath, prismatic breath. And honestly, I think that is a valid strategy as a GM to use. If this thing recharges every round, you hit them every round. I don't encourage going for the kill on the players every time, but I would encourage this thing poses the threat of a TPK. And it should. Like I said, this is your epilogue monster. This is the guardian of the big bad. This guy, this Dracohydra should be terrifying. And its simplicity as a DM will give you the ability to make the environmental storytelling of fighting this thing so big. This thing drops behind the door that you guys entered. You're now trapped inside. There's a door on the other end, and this thing unleashes a deluge of fire. This thing bites down on him. Oh, he's immune to fire damage. Okay. Well, he bites down, realizes that it did nothing, and then takes an ice bite instead. That's the thing. This thing can change strategies and essentially avoids immunities. Avoids immunities and resistances by just switching its damage, which is very hard for players to predict because a lot of support wizards and bards and that are going to cast like stuff that gives the players resistance to things or immunities to things. It doesn't work as well because you have to change the strategy on the fly because you never know, is this thing going to attack with fire? Is this thing going to attack with ice? What is this thing going to attack with? When it throws that prismatic breath, well, what if it throws lightning at us first? Well, okay, realizes one of us is not only still standing, but it barely did anything. Okay, well, we throw, it hits with acid next. And honestly, I believe this thing being able to recognize immunities does fit in. I don't believe that's an intelligence thing. I think that's more of a wisdom thing. You know, I bit down on it. It didn't work. I should use something else. I don't think that's an intelligence. You're not searching for it. You're not trying to figure it out. It's that didn't work. I know that didn't work. I need to try something else. So changing that strategy on the fly, like I said, I like simple monsters well made. And the Dracohydra from Fizzmans is one of those creatures. Very simple, very fun. Very difficult to deal with if you don't know what you're doing, because the tank's going to run up and immediately get hit by 5 attacks at +9. Ooh, ow, that hurts. Or the party's going to run up and this thing's going to release a prismatic breath on everybody, most likely hitting everybody for, even if you rolled 5 straight across, that's 25 damage. That'd be 20. I think 60-10 is 30 damage average, which is a lot. That is a lot of damage to be taking every single turn for everybody. At level 12, I think most people will have about 100 hit points, which means if this thing prismatic breaths, rolls high on one, rolls average on the others, you might just kill somebody outright. Of course, if this thing is the guard of a BBEG, it may have other creatures beside it, smaller creatures. I wouldn't be opposed to like baby Dracohydras, littler things, or basilisks accompanying this thing. Honestly, I wouldn't. It's one of those things where it's like, this thing's such a threat and it's so difficult to create that the creator would want to protect it. But this thing as a solo encounter for a party would be so cool and so difficult to deal with that it'd just be very interesting. Honestly, when you're throwing that Dracohydra at your opponents, there's so much that you can do. Once again, if you're hearing that background music, it's unavoidable down here at the studio. I don't know why so much is going on right outside our window. But yeah, what do you guys think of the Dracohydra? Is it the threat that I think it is? Should it be can it be a BBEG? What uses do you think you have for it? Please let me know in the comments. Of course, this is a live show once again. Follow us on Twitch, links in the description. Give us that like, give us that subscribe. I'm your GM Isaiah. This is where we're going to end tonight.